evening, and thank you for joining us for this Project Growth seminar, Constructing Your Post-Harvest Grain Marketing Plan. I'm Teresa Gilley, President of the Minnesota Soybean Growers Association. I'm a grower from Hallock, Minnesota. We appreciate your attendance tonight and are excited to share this webinar with you. Before we get started, I'd like to say a few words about Project Grow. Project Grow is a learning and leadership development program for the Minnesota soybean producers developed by the Minnesota Soybean Research and Promotion Council. The goal of Project Grow is to help producers increase opportunities in their operations by advancing their business and leadership skills. You can find out more about Project Grow at mnsoybean.org. So now let's get started with the webinar. This evening, I'm pleased to welcome Ed Usett, Grain Marketing Economist at the University of Minnesota, for a presentation titled Constructing Your Post-Harvest Grain Marketing Plan. Throughout the presentation, we welcome your questions and will leave time at the end of the presentation to answer as many as possible. For those of you in the room, please raise your hand and wait for me to recognize you. If you are online and would like to answer a question or would like to ask a question, please use the space on the right side of the screen to do so. Our facilitator will gather these and pose them to Ed using a Q&A at the end of the presentation. Please note that if you are viewing the presentation on full screen view, you will need to minimize the window in order to access the space to pose your question. Now it's time to get started. Ed serves as a grain marketing economist for the Center for Farm Financial Management at the University of Minnesota, the developers of FinPack software. Working with his colleagues at CFFM and in Extension, Ed developed the award-winning Winning the Game series of workshops. In addition, he manages commodity author, Grain Marketing is Simple. It's just not easy. He is passionate about helping farmers to use efficient grain marketing strategies to put more money in their pockets. Please join me in welcoming Ed.
Thank you, Teresa, and hello, everybody. I want to thank Project Grow and Minnesota Soybean for inviting me along here today to talk about constructing your post-harvest grain marketing plan. I always like to set the stage before I get into the details of writing a marketing plan with a few definitions and make sure everyone is clear what I'm trying to accomplish here. I'll start with a definition of a marketing plan as a proactive strategy to price your grain that takes into consideration everything you want to think about in your farm, your business, your financial goals, your cash flow needs, storage capacity, etc. The operative word here is that it's a proactive plan. We're looking ahead. We're trying to avoid being reactive, that is making sales just because we have to make them, and not overactive. I'm not keen on the overuse of pricing tools. Marketing, I like to remind people, is very important. Our friends at Iowa State University will tell you that the average farm is earning somewhere in the order of 20 to 30 cents a bushel. And this is a long-term average, and that's not a big margin. And yet I look at that, and I hope that you realize that I do, that just 10 cents more per bushel could increase a bottom line, the average bottom line, by 33 to 50%. So to me, great marketing is not about finding the high price. You'll find that this evening's session, I'll spend very little time on supply and demand and a price outlook, a price prediction. I don't go there. I'm going to develop a plan with the aim of finding an extra 10 to 20 cents per bushel with that plan and trying to avoid mistakes along the way. Why do I need a marketing plan? Fear and greed are very powerful emotions. We saw them in action over the last few months as prices roared higher in May and June and have faded off since. Those emotions affect our decisions, and the only real defense you have against your own emotions is a solid plan. There's an old saw in the business in the grain business that says you plan your trades and trade your plan. So tonight we're going to spend some time talking about developing, constructing a post-harvest grain marketing plan. Now, a couple months ago, we did another webinar on how to develop a pre-harvest marketing plan. And I would like to take a moment and just illustrate the differences between pre-harvest and post-harvest marketing. Pre-harvest marketing, in my mind, is a very strategic approach to marketing. It's very forward-looking. I might write a pre-harvest marketing plan for up to 2 years prior to a harvest. I don't have a pre-harvest marketing plan published yet for the 2017 or 2018 crop years, but I could look out that far. There's nothing says I couldn't do that. Production costs are a very important part of that pre-harvest marketing approach. They help me establish my minimum price objectives. And seasonal patterns often point to April, May, and June, spring, early summer as a good time for action. Well, today we're going to focus on post-harvest marketing, which is very different. Post-harvest marketing is tactical. We write a plan at harvest, and that plan is based on our thoughts on basis, your cash price relative to futures, and carrying charges. And we're going to spend a lot of time on that issue here today. Production costs, which are so important to pre-harvest marketing, I won't even talk about them in post-harvest marketing plan. That might sound unfair to some of you listening. You might say, well, geez, it cost me $4 to produce my corn. It's not fair that the market is only offering $3 or $3.20 or $2.85 as it is today. Well, that's the not easy part of marketing. You've already grown a crop, and in a post-harvest mentality says that your cost of production are sunk costs, and we make the best with what we have in front of us. The only thing post-harvest marketing has in common with pre-harvest marketing is that seasonal patterns once again point to April, May, June as a good time for action. That's when cash prices on average tend to be at their highest, and you'll see those themes that we talked about 2 months ago come up again tonight. Well, let's get started, and here are some of the things I want to cover. I want to talk quickly about our post-harvest marketing choices. You've just harvested your corn, your soybeans, your wheat. What choices do you have in front of you? I want to talk about what Earl would do. This is one of my celebrity producers who helped illustrate my ideas, and you're going to meet Earl either or, and we're going to talk about his approach and how that impacts my constructing a post-harvest marketing plan. And finally, we'll take what we learned from Earl, a few other thoughts, and we will write a post-harvest marketing plan for the 2016 corn and soybean and wheat crops. Well, this is a template for my post-harvest corn marketing plan. We could use the same one for soybeans or wheat. I've got a very simple objective here. I'm seeking strategies that balance risk and reward in the current market environment. I also note that I will hold no unpriced grain beyond July 1. That is the 11th commandment of grain marketing, and I hope you are all studious in paying attention to that this year, because by July 1, things had already started their free fall. Well, our choices in that plan, as written in that plan, are pretty simple. Our choices at harvest are frankly quite simple. You can sell your grain at harvest, you can hold your grain in storage to sell later, or you can hold your grain in storage and sell the carry. We're going to talk about all three of these, and the bigger issue, of course, is how do I make a choice? Some of you may look at these three simple choices, and you're thinking, well, I use options. I use options to re-own sales. And I will admit that puts and calls can add a lot of bells and whistles to these three different choices, but the fact is, strip away the bells and whistles, you're down to these three choices, and we have to talk about how I make that choice. And that gets us to Earl and what Earl would do. Let's meet Earl. Earl Either-Or is a producer with on-farm storage. And despite that picture of a real person, Earl is not real, but hopefully you'll understand his approach. At harvest every year, Earl makes this either-or choice. He's going one direction or another. When carrying charges are large, and we're talking about price differences between different delivery months in the futures market, I'll talk more about this in a moment. When those carrying charges are large, he chooses to store grain and sell the carry. That's one choice. Or if carrying charges are small, he chooses to store his grain unpriced for sale in the spring of the year. Well, I'm going to introduce now a little decision tree that helps us size up the market at harvest and sort of come to a decision on where I want to go this year. The examples are the specifics of our marketing plan as we speak to them during this session. We'll speak specifically to the 2016 crop. But I like to believe that what we review today will be just as relevant a year from now or 5 years from now. And what I want you to note here in this decision tree is the top of the tree is carrying charge with a question mark. Is the carrying charge large or small? That's the question that Earl asked, and it's at the top of my decision tree. Well, when carrying charges are large, and I'm talking about the deferred contracts trading at a premium to the nearby contract. So let me give you an example. Today in the corn market, we have a large carry. You've got December corn futures tonight, and this is mid-August of 2016, trading at $3.40 a bushel, $3.40 a bushel. That's the December contract. The July 2017 contract, 7 months out, is trading at a 23-cent premium at $3.63. We would call that a large carrying charge. It's very common when we have big crops, and by the way, we've got a big crop coming, and when there are ample free stocks in the market, and we've got that too. It's also what we call a bear market environment. And when we get this large carry, sort of low price bear market environment, Earl's going to play it safe in this environment and sell the carry. I'll introduce that. I'll explain that in a moment. Earl has 3 ways to sell the carry. He can forward contract. For example, today, corn growers, and I'm focused on corn for this moment because the corn market has a large carry, as does the wheat market, but not the soybean market. But if you were to look at your price for corn delivered at harvest, I'll use southwestern Minnesota numbers right now, you're going to see that your bid for corn delivered at harvest is about $2.85 a bushel, $2.90 in that area. I'm talking now southwestern, south central Minnesota numbers. If you ask your elevator for a bid for April, May, or June delivery, it's going to be at a premium to that. I don't know how big that premium is, but the carry, there's a positive carry in the board, and that's going to work into a higher bid for spring delivery. So is that 15 cents more, 20 cents more, 25? It's going to depend on your market. If it's a good bid, a strong bid, you can forward contract. That's called selling the carry. You can store your grain and sell that premium price. You can do it with a hedge to arrive contract. you can do it directly if you have a brokerage account, a margin account, and sell futures. The advantage of selling futures, it gives you time to search out a better basis in the months ahead. Carrying charges, as this chart shows, and this is the corn market from 3 years ago, but looks awfully familiar to today's market. People who sell the carry know that they can store today at harvest and sell tomorrow at a premium. You got two benefits here. You're going to earn a premium in that carry. You're going to earn what I would call a return to storage. You're also hedging your price risk. Once you sell the carry, you won't get a lower price. The only downside to this is if a big bull market begins, you've already established your price. How does Earl do it? Well, I'm using an example from 2 years ago, southwestern Minnesota, and the numbers are very, very similar to what we have in southwestern Minnesota today. The basis was 60 under the December contract. You had cash price of $2.88 a bushel at harvest. That's really within a nickel of where we are today. By selling the July contract at a 30-cent carry, positive carry, these are real numbers from mid-October. By the way, today's carry is not 30 cents to July. It's 23 cents. It's good, but not great. By doing that and by having an expectation of 30 under by June, I have essentially locked in a price near about $3.48 a bushel by selling the carry in October of 2014. The fact is, I haven't locked in exactly $3.48. There's some basis risk there. Basis could be a little better, could be a little worse. In fact, that year, basis ended up being a little weaker, more like 40 under by June. I ended up with about $3.40 a bushel on that corn. Now, to fully understand the carrying charges and Earl's approach here, we have to look at a situation where there isn't a positive carry. And here I show you the soybean market from 4 years ago, October of 2012. This is an inverted market. This is the opposite of a carrying charge market. You've got not prices going up the steps, but down the steps. That is, as you look forward, the deferred contracts are trading at a discount. This is a market that is asking you to deliver now, not later. It occurs when supplies are small. We've got a scarcity of stocks. And, of course, we're looking at $15 soybeans, the good old days when prices were much higher. Does it make sense? I talk about selling the carry. Does it make sense in an inverted market environment to store grain today and sell tomorrow? I don't think so. That doesn't make any sense at all. We've got to take a different approach. Earl needs to take a different approach if we've got a flat or inverted market. So in this bull market environment, this inverted price environment or flat price environment, Earl says, no, the selling the carry doesn't make sense. I'm going to do something different. I'm going to take a chance with unpriced grain in storage on my farm. These small crops, tighter stock situation lead to smaller carrying charges or inverses, and that's what we have today in the soybean market. I hesitate to call it a bull market, but in fact, carrying charges are flat in the soybean market today. That is to say, the nearby November contract out into January, March, May, July, they're all trading at or near the same price. As you can see, this is an index of Iowa corn prices over the last 25 years. Earl's going to take a chance with unpriced grain in the bin. By the way, if I had a pretty chart for Minnesota soybean prices or Illinois soybean prices or Nebraska corn prices, they all look very similar to this. Cash prices tend to be, this is an average, tend to be lowest at harvest, highest in the spring. It does make what the strategy Earl is doing, putting unpriced grain in the bin. I mean, there's some intuitive stickum there. We would expect, hopefully, higher prices by spring. Well, Earl's making a simple choice at harvest. It's based on carrying charges alone. Does it work? Well, we got to compare. How do we know if this is an effective strategy? Well, let's introduce someone to compare Earl to. Let's compare him to Barney Binless. Barney is a friend of mine, a celebrity producer. Barney is a guy who has no on-farm storage. So each year he harvests his crop, be it corn, soybeans, wheat. He sells it off the combine, delivers to the elevator every year. He represents the harvest price. So what we're asking is, does Earl's choice at harvest beat the harvest price? Well, let's take a look at some numbers. I've got my celebrity producers have been in action for 26 years now. The 2015-16 crop year is the most recent one completed. We're comparing Earl's average price. These are cash prices in southwestern Minnesota. Earl's results to Barney's results over a 26-year period. Now, I want to make a couple clarifications here. Earl is storing grain, and I know a lot of producers like to ignore storage costs, but I'm not going to let Earl ignore storage costs. I am charging him variable costs of on-farm storage. What does that involve? Well, I charge Earl, for example, interest on his money. Earl could choose to sell his grain at harvest and buy a CD or lend it out or invest in the stock market and earn big bucks. He could do something with that. And he chooses not to, so I'm going to charge him interest on his money. I'm also going to charge him an in and out charge to cover shrink, handling fees. That's going to be 8 to 11 cents a bushel right off the top. So understand that the numbers you see for Earl are net of those on-farm storage costs. We're not talking about the cost of building a bin. Those are fixed costs, just variable costs. Another point. It's a rare producer who has enough storage on their farm to hold their complete crop, 100% of their crop. I'm very generous with Earl. I'm going to tell Earl that you've got enough space on your farm for 80% of your crop. So, for example, if Earl harvests 25,000 bushels of soybeans, I'm telling Earl, you've got space on the farm for 20,000 bushels, which of course begs the question, what about those other 5,000 bushels? Well, Earl sells that at harvest at the same price Barney sells it, and that 20% sale at harvest is in the numbers you see here. So Earl's results include 20% sold at harvest at Barney's price. They also include the fact that I'm dinging him for on-farm storage costs. Look at corn. Earl has averaged 15 cents a bushel better than Barney over the last 26 years. That's 15 cents a bushel on every bushel of corn produced over a 26-year period. It's a lot of money. In soybeans, he has averaged over 50 cents a bushel. And in spring wheat, again, like corn, 15 cents a bushel. You can see on the far right of this table, how often has Earl been better than or at least equal to Barney? 21 of 26 years in corn. That's 4 out of 5 years in corn. Not quite 4 out of 5 years in soybeans, 18 of 26 years. 20 of 26 years in wheat. So what do we learn from Earl? This simple choice, looking only at carrying charges, has paid off versus the harvest price. And it's paid off net of on-farm storage costs. His results were consistent for every grain, for corn, soybeans, and wheat. We also learned that Earl's choice does not work every time. Nothing is 100%. Earl has had years where Barney's harvest price was better than his. Doesn't happen often, but it does happen, and it'll happen again. If anyone approaches you with a marketing system guaranteed to beat the market, I always advise people to put your hand on your wallet and back out of the room. No one can offer that. So, I want to think about writing a post-harvest marketing plan, and Earl has already given us a big clue to start this process. I've already shown you a blank plan template. Print that off, find a copy of it on our website. If you need it, get a hold of Minnesota Soybean Project Grow or myself. We will get you a clean copy if that's what you want. And then ask the question that Earl asked, what's the carry in the market? That's a good place to start. Earl's not perfect, but by God, he's having pretty good success, so I want to start with that. Now get out that decision tree and start to refine your plan. And these are some of the questions that Earl doesn't ask, but I think we need to. For example, basis. Is it high or low? What's your opinion of where it's going in the months ahead? That's going to vary from year to year. I will tell you today, as of midsummer, getting into late summer of 2016, I think basis is going to have problems getting very strong in the months ahead during the 16-17 crop year. This could be a very different answer a year from now. Are market prices high or low? I don't think high prices are a problem right now, and we could argue they're on the low side. What are my storage costs? I just throw that out there. For those of you who are going to go into town and pay the local elevator 3 to 5 cents a bushel per month for storage, it's going to take a lot of fun out of Earl's results. Earl makes money on it with his own storage. If you're going to pay the retail price for storage, you're going to have a hard time making it work. Finally, we can't get away from this. What's your appetite for risk? Earl does things in a very cut and dried way. Some people have a greater appetite for risk, some have less. You've got to tune that plan into your own appetite. And finally, don't forget your exit plan. I will emphasize this quite often here as we write the plan. The exit plan is, I'm asking you if you put, for example, $9 soybeans into storage at harvest, my question for you is, what price are you waiting for? Put a number on it. Just don't tell me a higher price. Put a number on it. I think it's healthy to have an idea of what your objective is and write it down. It's not in cement. It can be changed, but I think that's a challenge for some people. Maybe we shouldn't change it so often, but write down an idea of what you're looking for. If you sell the carry, as Earl would do when carries are large, using the futures market or hedge to arrive, you need an exit plan. You need a goal on basis. Are you waiting for basis to narrow? And I'm using southwestern Minnesota numbers. Are you waiting for 60 under? Are you waiting for 50 under, 40 under, 30 under? Write it down. Get an idea of what it is you're aiming for. We start with our decision tree. We're going to use that to write our post-harvest marketing plans. We've got our template here, and we're going to try and fill in the gaps there. You can see I have 3 different choices up here. At harvest, I can price and deliver. I can choose to just price and deliver so many bushels. I can store so many bushels of unpriced grain on the farm for sale later in the year. And I've got spaces to write down how many bushels at what price or by what time. And finally, the bottom part of the plan is how much will I store and sell the carry on? How am I going to do that? Well, let's take a look at what we see as of mid-August 2016. Again, this is a very tactical approach. You note I haven't talked supply and demand. Earl never looked at supply and demand. Earl never listened to anyone's outlook. I'm not suggesting that ignorance is a good thing. We want to be on top of what's going on in the market, but Earl's having quite a bit of success just paying attention to facts and figures in terms of carrying charge and basis, what the market's telling us. So let's start with corn. We've got, these are southwestern Minnesota numbers now, and as you're listening in, I don't know where you're from, but you have to adjust the basis ideas and basis thoughts for your part of the country. The Red River Valley is going to have a weaker basis. Southeastern Minnesota is going to have a stronger basis. Adjust accordingly. Well, as of mid-August, we've got December 16 futures contract trading about $3.40 a bushel. The new crop basis at the market I track in southwestern Minnesota is 55 under. In other words, the elevator is bidding 55 cents less than the December contract for harvest delivery, and that's $2.85 a bushel. That's the harvest price. We note also that the July 17 futures contract, 7 months out, and we could look at the March, we could look at the May. I tend to look at the July contract. You should look at all of them, but I tend to use the July as kind of my default contract because it is the last truly old crop contract in the same crop year as the December contract. The December contract represents the new crop year, and the July contract, 7 months out, is the last true old crop contract. You get into the September contract for corn, and that's sort of a quasi-new crop, old crop contract. And you see, though, I want to note, again, from December to July, we've got a 23-cent positive carrying charge. That's a good carry. Not a great one, not as good as we saw 2 years ago, but it's a good carrying charge. So we run through this decision tree. We note a large carry. Our futures prices low. Well, I've got kind of mixed feeling there. 340 sure looks low, and I'd like to guarantee everyone that it can't go any lower, but unfortunately it could. Basis, I think at 55 under certainly isn't strong. I would lean towards that weak side. Well, how would Earl think about this, and how might I add to Earl's approach? Well, if we look at the corn market as it is today, Earl's going to say, look, I've got a carry to sell, and he's going to sell that carry. Earl, I want to remind you, lives in a very black and white world. He either sells the carry or he holds unpriced grain. He never splits it up. You don't have to do that. I don't have to do that. We can take our judgment in here a little bit. I'm going to note that basis for corn at harvest is average or maybe a touch below average. Unfortunately, we've got a big corn crop coming. I remind you that basis never really got off the ground, never really got sharp and strong in the spring of 2016. And unfortunately, right now, I think we're going to see a repeat in the year ahead. We've got another big crop. I'm going to diversify a bit. I'm just, Earl would sell the carry, but I'm willing to hold some unpriced grain in storage. So let's write a plan. Get a good average price, hold no unpriced corn beyond July 1, 2017. That's my 11th commandment of grain marketing. I just very briefly, you get beyond the end of June in any year, and you've got a couple of powerful forces working against you. A cash price is made up of two components, the futures price and the basis, and you get into midsummer in a normal year, and you're going to see that futures prices tend to have pressure on them to go down, and the basis tends to have pressure on it and go down. You've got two powerful forces working against you, so I like to adhere to that 11th commandment, and you'll always see it in my post-harvest marketing plans. I intend to have my bins empty by July 1. So, Earl here, let's just pretend he's got 100,000 bushels of corn to deal with. I don't have room for all of it, or I may have some of it priced earlier. And sorry, I've got a typo there with the D16 sales. We're going to move 20,000 bushels at harvest. I haven't got room for everything. 40,000 bushels, I'll place that corn in storage and wait for higher prices. Earl would sell the carry on everything. But I'm telling you that I'm not a slave to what Earl does. I'm going to take a risk on higher prices in the months ahead. And I'm looking, and I apologize. I think I have a little typo there. I want to sell. I have three different price objectives there, 335, 355, 375. Remember, the harvest price here is at 285. I want to sell roughly a third of that 40,000 bushels. That should be 13,000 bushels, roughly, at each of those three price points. That's my exit plan. You need an exit plan. Write down the numbers. You can change them later if you need to, but I caution you about changing them. Big problem, I'll take you back a few months. We had a wonderful rally and a wonderful opportunity for people to get rid of old crop grain from 2015 in the spring of 2016. And those who didn't, I believe, probably didn't have an exit plan, probably didn't put a number down and just did what we do too often, which is wait for another 25 cents. Put a number down and try and stick to it. You'll note on the bottom, on 40,000 bushels, I'll place that corn in storage and sell the carry with July futures. On my make-believe farm, Earl and I, we have our margin accounts. We're going to sell July futures. That would be 8 contracts, and we will unwind the hedge when the basis reaches 35 under the July, 35 cents under that July contract, or by June 20. I know what I'm going to end up with those bushels. If I can get the 35 under and the July contract is at 363, I'm going to end up with about $3.30 on that corn if I get to that objective. I might even get a little bit better. I might not reach it. The good news is I know that I'm heading towards about 330 on those bushels. The bad news is there's no opportunity for 350 or 380 or $4 if, in fact, the corn market wants to go much higher. I've diversified a little bit. Soybeans. As of mid-August in southwestern Minnesota, we've got the November nearby contract at $10.15. The new crop basis in my neck of the woods is 75 under. That's a hard one to swallow, but consistent with the last year. That means my local elevator is bidding $9.40 a bushel today for soybeans delivered at harvest. Note the July futures, the July 17 delivery contract is trading 13 cents less than the November contract. That's an inverted market, really very close to a flat market. Earl's not going to sell the carry here. There's no carry to sell. So he's working down the other side of the decision tree. He sees a small carry or modest inverse, actually. Are futures prices high? No, not at all. And that works him to that leads him to this decision that we're going to try some unpriced grain in storage, unpriced soybeans in storage. Got to get an exit plan, though. So I've got an inverted soybean market. Basis is poor, but I happen to be modestly more friendly towards the soybean basis in the new year, 2017, than I am for corn. I don't want you to get wildly bullish on the basis, but I have reason to believe things can get a little better. So I'm going to hope for the best with unpriced soybeans in storage. It's not a guarantee that things will work, but that this is where our thought process leads us, and I'm willing to take that chance. So I've got an objective here on my marketing plan. I'm looking for a good average price. The 11th commandment of marketing applies to soybeans too. I want my bins empty by July 1 of next year. I've got limited storage, so I'll take 20% of my bushels, price them, and deliver them at harvest, swallow hard and take that. And then on the remaining 20,000 bushels that I have in storage, I've put price targets on it. 5,000 bushels at $10.50, 5,000 at $10.70, 5,000 at $10.90, 5,000 at $11.10. I've got them scaled up. No guarantee just because I wrote them down doesn't mean I have a guarantee we'll get there, but I have numbers now. Bushels unsold at the end of April will be sold in equal increments in May and June. I had the same thing in my corn plan for bushels in the bin. The point is we should have price objectives if the market's going higher, but sometimes the market doesn't cooperate, doesn't go that much higher. And if I've got bushels left and it's the end of April, I've got nothing done, I've got that drop dead date of July 1 looming. I've got to start a graceful exit in May and June. And of course, that May and June are often, not always, not bad times to make some cash sales of corn and soybeans. Spring wheat, we can't forget our spring wheat producers up in the Red River Valley. September futures, the new crop is September in wheat, which is the harvest is going on right now. You've got futures at $5.24, a 60 under basis, which is the worst I've seen in 25 years, or as I guess I've found one other year that bad. So we've got very poor basis, harvest price $4.64, and we do have a positive carry out into March, May, and July. I focus on the May here. So we've got a wide basis, carrying charges are large. There's a strong temptation to store wheat because futures prices are low, and I wouldn't object to that on some bushels. But when I see a big carry like that, when Earl sees a big carry like that, he's going to sell that carry. We've got a basis that is 74 cents under the May contract at harvest. We've reached 10 under in spring wheat each of the last few years, and that's a big potential gain. So Earl has got a good opportunity there to sell the carry. I don't have a written plan to show you here, though. Maybe that's homework for you to think about. What would your exit strategy be? What price objectives would you put in here? Well, marketing is not easy. I've given you my approach to constructing a post-harvest marketing plan. Earl's approach and Earl's performance over time, he shows us an approach that works over time. Let's not confuse that with some sort of guarantee or assurance that it will work every time. Sometimes Barney's harvest price is better than Earl. Nothing is 100%. This is a difficult task. But that said, we work through the process and write the best plan we can in the environment we've been dealt. My plan, my approach, and Earl's approach, it's not perfect. This is not a perfect plan. I'll take my imperfect plan over no plan at all, because when I write this plan and I have an exit strategy attached, I've got numbers on what I'm waiting for with my corn, my soybeans and my wheat in the bin. What price am I looking for? What basis am I looking for? I've laid out a benchmark. I've laid out my goals. And if I have a written plan and I've got the goals written down, now if the world changes, now if something comes up that we hadn't thought about in the months ahead, I can go back to the plan and adapt it to that changing environment. I have something to change. I had an idea of where I was going. If I don't have a plan, then I guess I really don't know where I was heading in the months ahead. And if the world changes, I didn't know where I was going before, I don't know what to adapt to. I'll take my imperfect plan over no plan at all any day of the week. So, little review here. Our post-harvest choices are very few. You can sell grain at harvest, you can hold it in storage to sell later, you can hold grain in storage and sell the carry. Options add a lot of bells and whistles to these three basic choices. Strip away the bells and whistles, there's your choice. What would Earl do? Earl looks at carrying charges. And it is my hope that with this webinar in the future, when you think post-harvest marketing, the first thing you do is you go to the CME group for futures quotes or the Minneapolis Grain Exchange for her spring wheat futures quotes, and you look at the structure of carrying charges, large or small. Now we have to refine your plan. I'm not a slave to what Earl does. I'm going to ask myself some simple questions. Is the basis high or low? What's my opinion on basis in the months ahead? You have to have an opinion there. Are prices high or low? This has helped me a lot. I've been doing this for over a decade, and I have had years when Earl would put grain in the bin. Remember, Earl does one thing or the other, and I've said, not me, not when we had some years when prices were very high and the downside was apparent, and it saved me a lot. I had to think about that. I guess in those comments, I also spoke to my appetite for risk. You have to think about that. And again, get an exit plan. If you put your soybeans in the bin this fall, think about, okay, what's the value of these beans today, and what price am I waiting for? What's my number? What's my numbers if you want to split it up? And write it down. You can adapt it later, but if you don't write down a number, you end up waiting for 25 cents more, which can get you in a lot of trouble. What can you do today? Well, we already did this. We reviewed carrying charges and basis. Basis in all three commodities, unfortunately, is pretty poor, very poor in spring wheat, poor in soybeans, and below average in corn. We reviewed carrying charges. We've got large positive carrying charges in the corn and spring wheat markets, but not in soybeans. And that sends Earl in different directions. Take that information, think of your own farm, write a post-harvest marketing plan, and again, don't forget to think about your exit strategy, your exit plan. What numbers are you waiting for? What basis are you waiting for? Well, I've gone on long enough here. I think it's time to take a few questions.
We have the first question is, since the pre-harvest presentation back in June, how much have you had to trade your plan based on what you expected to happen in the market, or do you anticipate over the next couple of weeks will you have to do that?
The pre-harvest marketing plan, you want back up to that? Pre-harvest marketing, remember, Ryan, all my farms are mythical. It's a lot easier that way, by the way. I was able to get 3/4 of my anticipated soybean crop priced. Great opportunities in soybeans. You know, we got up over $11 in the November contract. I didn't sell the high. I got a nice average price. Corn, we never reached my minimum price objectives, but I did step up, as I talked about all winter, and got about 40% of my corn crop price. This is, of course, the seller's lament in a down market. my lament is I should have sold more, but that's hindsight. I try not to do that to myself. I did get 40% priced. Spring wheat, now there, I was waiting for another dime back when we were in the high close to $6 mark. I was waiting for $6. We never got it. A little lesson in there somewhere.
I have one. What month historically tends to have the smallest basis? Because right now our bases are pretty large.
Yes, basis tends to be narrowest, strongest, if you will. The cash price closest to futures out in the April, May, June period. That just like that seasonal price pattern, springtime is tends to be our narrowest basis. But Teresa, I know what you're talking about. You're looking at your local elevator, and they are not bidding a very strong basis out for delivery in May and June. And that's why I would today be reluctant to use a forward contract for May and June delivery. I would prefer a hedge to arrive. I would prefer to sell futures directly because I believe when we get to next spring, the basis will be better than, for example, your elevator might be bidding 50 under the July for June delivery. Well, I like to think we'll be 10 or 15 cents better than that. I can't guarantee it, but I believe we will.
We seem to have I know in northern Minnesota, it used to be that they would, in the futures prices, they would also set a futures basis, and that has got to be something that a lot of elevators aren't doing anymore. So to be able to forward contract on an HTA or whatever, you can't lock in a lower basis either at this time. So it is a little bit of a challenge.
That is. You have to, as I say, basis is a difficult part of this equation. You have to have an opinion. You have to have an idea. You have to have you have to watch it every day, just as you do prices. And it's just another challenging part of marketing, but it's too important to pass up. You have to pay attention to it. Any questions from our listening audience? I spoke at Farm Fest a little bit on supply and demand, just a quick background on the current market. I also write a column for Corn and Soybean Digest, and I have to submit them a month in advance, which is nerve-wracking because markets can change a lot between the time you write something. The year ahead of us, the 2016-17 crop year, we only have to go back 6-8 weeks when the fireworks were going off. And the market mentality, all I can say is we were not just anticipating problems with the end of El Nino and a coming La Nina, we were expecting them. And now that here we are in mid-August, we slipped through July with nothing less than wonderful weather. The corn crop looks very good. USDA has indicated they're expecting a record yield, and I think we got stuck with a used year. It looks an awful lot like 2014 and 2015. That is to say, demand is good. I'm not gonna trash talk on the demand side of the market. Corn demand is good. Soybean demand is good. Export, domestic, it's all good. The problem is supply, which is even better. And supply outruns demand. We're going to keep prices on the defensive in the year ahead. We're not going to get out of this mode until we find a major producing country, some part of the world that trips, that stumbles in a big way. It doesn't have to be the U.S. It could be Europe. It could be South America. We just haven't had it. It'll happen. I just don't know if that's next year or 2 years or 5 years down the road.
Are there any other questions out there? Well, this concludes our webinar, Constructing Your Post-Harvest Grain Marketing Plan. On behalf of Project Grow and the Minnesota Soybean Research and Promotion Council, I would like to thank Ed for taking his time this evening. A replay of this webinar will be posted to the Project Grow website. We encourage you to visit the Project Grow section at mnsoybean.org to review this webinar and for upcoming events and content that will help you become a more successful soybean farmer. Thank you again for joining us, and have a great evening and a successful harvest.